In the 19th century, a few mathematicians developed a powerful model or method that can be used to check the truth value of many statements. Henri Poincaré, or however his name is spelled, developed a phase room model, and by applying it to statements other people make, we can decide if they are likely true or not. Today we will learn what a phase room is, using a few examples, and learn how to apply it to calling out other people's BS when they make statements that they think to be true but sound a bit lofty. And personally, I use those phase room experiments all the time as one of my main ways to explain the world to me, to make myself as error-free and consistent in my arguments as possible. And in essence, Henri introduced the concept of phase rooms, and those describe all possible states a system can be in. Imagine a garden with a pond. That same garden with the water of the pond floating above the pond is also part of the phase room. That scenario is very unlikely, but theoretically possible. You can take the position of the particles involved, and all possible combinations of those particle positions are also valid states of that system. And, well, theoretically, it would be possible to achieve such a state of a system, but it is not very likely if you introduce the laws of nature. And once we introduce time and the laws of nature, well, some interesting things might happen, and the system might find back to a ground state, which is likely and not as unlikely as water floating. And when we turn back on the physics engine, so to speak, the water will obviously fall down again. We can make a guess how the system will behave over time and what a stable state after turning the physics back on might look like. Obviously, the water will collect in the cavity that was the original pond, or most of it will. And with this toy example, phase rooms might not seem too useful. But we can also apply the same exact concept to evolution and the human species in general, and find out things about our own behavior and what might be good and what might be bad, what conflicts with evolution and what does not conflict with evolution. And we just take an initial set of things we strongly assume to be true, like laws of nature. Things like evolution, the law of slow change, human drives, etc. Those are usually called axioms in logical systems. And we can simulate those hypothetical scenarios in our mind using those laws. We conduct a thought experiment without doing much physical work, just a simulation in our mind. And sometimes that simulation will lead to a contradiction, to states that are rather impossible to achieve in, well, the face of the laws of nature as we know them. And the initial premise might and must thus be false. So, as an example, suppose someone tells us that sweets or sugary items are healthy and the new big thing, since they are energy dense, they don't perish, they are cheap to create, they are tasty, they are addictive, they make you feel good, and all kinds of other arguments. If we do not double check that statement, we might as well think it to be true. When we double check it using thought experiments, we might come up with certain contradictions, or at least points that aren't too clear and make us a bit cautious. First, we can check if the sweets or other items that they suggested could have occurred in one variation or another in past context, in evolutionary context. And when evolution happens, it only prepares us for what has already been there. Evolution cannot look into the future. And this is very important. Thus, we are only prepared for those things that already happened in the past. Another way to check is if it conflicts with the law of slow change, to replace a lot of food with something unknown at once. DNA is rather slow, and if we introduce a diet that consists of 50% sweets, then that's probably not a good idea, since it's a very fast change to such a system. During the evolutionary history of our race, sugar maybe occurred in the form of honey or some fruits, but those were comparably rare, and it was very difficult to find highly processed items. And lastly, the human programming is somewhat greedy when it comes to food, and introducing it to a totally new context where the object of our greed, of our hunger and appetite, namely the sweets or the soda, aren't rare anymore, is usually a very bad idea, since it leads to point 2 to a big change at once. And knowing all of those things and applying all of those, well, axioms to a possible scenario where we think about adding sweets to our diet in high numbers leads to lots of contradictions with things we know that must be true. We know that the law of slow change is, well, kind of prohibiting us from doing that. We also know that evolution did not prepare us for sweets, since all kinds of negative results will likely occur, like caries, obesity, diabetes, and all kinds of other things. We observe them nowadays. So we have a lot more knowledge than back then, but our alarm bells should have sounded back then if we had conducted such thought experiments. Okay, but let us now come to the most important points. Some thought experiments are based on phase rooms. You think up a hypothetical state or scenario of a system and apply your known rules to it and then simulate how those things will go. In many cases, you will end up with a resulting state that cannot be observed in reality. And thus, we can find contradictions easily and make a good prediction about the future. This works well with evolutionary systems. And all in all, the more facts you know to be true with a high degree of certainty, the more routinely you can judge new facts that enter your system. And when you know with very high confidence all those things that I just described to be true, evolution, laws of slow change, very abstract things, then you can apply them to any new statement someone makes and, well, in many cases, call BS very, very fast. Okay, and that is pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this kind of content, leave a thumbs up so I know to produce more of this video types in the future. However, if you feel like I missed something or misrepresented something, please let me know in the comment section so that other people, and especially I, can correct my errors and benefit from your wisdom. But until then, I wish you a pleasant day and goodbye.